Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzie, and I'm your host for this evening or early morning, as the time has gone past midnight in the UK. A lot to discuss today, as there's been news regarding potential bids that have come in for certain players. We've also got a few departures as well as incomings as well. So a lot to discuss in terms of the Liverpool front. So we'll begin with the latest rumor, and that is regarding Marc Guehi. Now, the current rumor is that Liverpool have agreed terms with the player, and apparently it is going to be a 5-year deal, which is no surprise. That is normally the deal that we present to our new signings. But the big question in regards to Marc Guehi, Crystal Palace, and Liverpool is that what will the transfer fee entail? Now, there's a lot of off-field issues surrounding Crystal Palace that could influence the outcome of this transfer. So just to give everyone a bit of context, the Crystal Palace co-owner John Textor owns both Crystal Palace and Lyon, and due to owning multiple clubs in the same potential competition for next season, which is the Europa League, that is something that prohibits UEFA rules. Um, and due to that, Texter actually sold his stake to an American businessman in the name of Woody Johnson last week for £190 million. Today, it was also confirmed that Texter has stepped down from his role as a director with Crystal Palace. So that could help Crystal Palace's case with UEFA to show that Texter has no affiliation with the club anymore. But it's still very unclear in terms of what is going to happen with Crystal Palace. An outcome will be confirmed in the next few days, I believe. Another possibility is that Palace could be demoted to the Conference League, and Nottingham Forest, due to where they're finishing the league, will end up taking their place in the Europa League next season. So there's a lot of off-field sort of drama happening in South London with regards to Crystal Palace. Um, whether it affects this deal, I don't think it will directly, but it could affect the negotiations where if Palace weren't able to get Europa League, then we could probably negotiate the fee a little bit lower than what they would want. Apparently, the rumors that they want around 60, 65 million pounds, which is ludicrous for a player that is on his final year of his contract, and you know that's not the kind of fee you'd pay for someone in that situation. So for me, 60, 65 is way above the true valuation of Gehi. If he was on a normal contract where he had 2, 3 years remaining, then I think maybe you can stretch out and pay for 60, 65. But with his current situation, I think that would be too much for Liverpool to do. But if I was to give you guys my prediction, I do believe that Gay will end up leaving Crystal Palace and joining Liverpool at some point in this window. So let's see what happens. Their situation is a bit unclear, but from a Palace's point of view, they still get to play Champions. They still get to play European football in the Conference League. So it's not the worst case scenario, but of course, their reward should have been to be participating in the Europa League next season. So we'll see what happens with Palace. Will they have any direct sort of involvement in regards to getting moving on to Liverpool? Possibly, but only time will tell. But I do feel like this is a deal that could happen sooner rather than later. especially with us being in the striker market right now. I think this deal will happen first before we sign a new striker. Next piece of news, I wouldn't even call it a rumor now, it's official. Jarell Quansah has officially joined by Leverkusen. So the fee is 35 million plus 5 million add-ons in terms of euros. I think so altogether it's about 35 million for us in pounds. We've got a buyback clause which can be activated in a couple of years' time. The fee is around 55 million pounds if we want to sign him in 2027. Overall, I think this is a good move for the player. I think it's a good move for Liverpool and for Bayer Leverkusen. So I think it suits all parties. For Bayer Leverkusen, they sign a very promising young defender to replace Jonathan Tah, who's of course moved over to Bayern Munich. From Jarell Quansah's point of view, he moves over to a league where it is played at a very competitive level, and he will be assured first team action, which is what he wants at this stage of his career. And from a Liverpool point of view, we're able to sell a player who we thought maybe isn't quite ready for the first team fold on a consistent basis. So therefore, it might make sense for him to venture over to a different league, gain first team experience, and if we feel like he is fulfilling the potential that we already envisioned in a couple of years' time, then we do have the option of buying the player back in 2027. So for me, this move suits all parties. I wish Quansah all the best. I don't think he's done anything wrong in terms of his involvement in the team. I just feel like he wasn't Slot's sort of ideal defender, and I think there were parts of his games where maybe, lack of focus led to individual errors on his part. And that's something he needs to sort of improve on. But that only comes with playing more games. So he'll get that experience in the Bundesliga. And I'm sure it'll make him a better player in the long term. So wish him all the best and hopefully he does well. Whether Liverpool activate that buyback clause doesn't tend to happen, if I'm being honest. But, Quansah could be one that breaks that tradition and maybe returns to Liverpool one day. But we'll see whenever that time comes. Next rumor, Luis Díaz. Now, yesterday we brought the news that he Bayern Munich approached Liverpool, but today there was more of a strong confirmation that Liverpool have rejected a proposal from Bayern Munich and have insisted that the player is not for sale. And this is not the first time Liverpool have communicated that sort of statement to the public. The last time that happened was about a couple of weeks ago when Barcelona also made a proposal, which was swiftly dismissed due to the financing. But they were trying to offer us around 40 million, including add-ons, which is completely way off the valuation of Luis Diaz. So it begs the question in terms of, do Liverpool generally mean when they say that he's not for sale, or are Liverpool playing a bit of a smart game right now where they are anticipating an approach from a Saudi team, and we all know that they will be willing to spend above the valuation price, and that could be something that helps Liverpool in the long term in terms of reinvesting into the squad. Honestly, I think that is exactly what's happening right now. I think Liverpool are holding out for an approach or for a move or bid from a Saudi team, and that would be the time when Liverpool decide to part ways, because the way they would spin it is that it was an offer that was too much for us to refuse, so therefore we had to accept and allow the player to leave. Um, Now, if we do not receive that bid, or Luis Diaz shows strong indication that he doesn't want to move over to Saudi, then I think Diaz will be a Liverpool player next season. Um, but to his defense, if he does end up staying at Liverpool next season, I believe he deserves to get a new contract. But I don't think FSG are in the same viewpoint in regards to that situation. I believe that they would rather keep him for another year. Um, and then maybe next summer is the time where we sell him, because if we sell him now, it doesn't really matter who we bring in to replace him. It weakens the squad, and if we keep him, we have a better chance of winning more trophies next season. And I do believe, if he has a good season in the upcoming season, then he will continue to hold his sort of value in the transfer market, and his valuation will remain closely to what is the current value of his sort of profile and what he brings to the table. So for me, um, it wouldn't be fair for Diaz to continue playing on and not get a new contract. But I don't think FSG want to give him a new contract, mainly down to his age, where he's 28, 29, and they don't tend to give bumper deals unless your name is Van Dijk or Mohamed Salah. So let's see what happens with Diaz. I only see Diaz leaving for Saudi if he is to part ways this summer. If that bid, or if he rejects that move, then Diaz will be a Liverpool player next season. And I, for one, would be pleased. I think he's a player that will definitely give us that attacking threat from that left hand side, can also play up top as well. So he's exactly the quality we need. And I feel like he'd be um, one of our so strong attackers in our front line. So for me, I wouldn't mind Luis Diaz staying for another season. I just feel like he deserves a new contract as well. But whether that happens or not, I doubt it. But crazy things have happened, so we'll just have to wait and see if Diaz is rewarded for all his hard work over the last few years. On to the next rumor. Now, this rumor was circulating earlier today, and the sort of context of the rumor is that Liverpool are willing to offer Darwin Núñez, Chiesa, and £17 million on top in order to sign Osimhen. Now, the question is that good business from a Liverpool point of view? In my opinion, no. I think that's an outrageous deal. If that was, if that was true to any extent, I think it's complete BS from the media outlet. I don't believe there's any truth to that particular deal. It sounds like the journalist has been playing FIFA career mode at a beginner's level, because that's not the kind of deal that happens in the real world. Just think of the valuation as well. In terms of Darwin Núñez, we would value him at 50 million currently for a European side. If it was a Saudi team, then we'd probably value him at maybe 70, 80 million pounds. Chiesa, I think, we bought him for a cut price due to his situation at Juventus last year. But his valuation easily we could, attain about 15 million for him. So put those two numbers together, that's 65 million. And they're saying that we want to add 17 on top. So that pretty much equals to 82 million. Osimhen is not worth 82 million. He has a 60 million pound release clause. So how does that connection make sense? So for me, this story is complete BS. I don't think this is a deal that Liverpool would want to offer Napoli. The only way this kind of deal works, if we're trying to, side with this media outlet, is that it would require Nunes and Chiesa to go without any money on top. I think that would be the right sort of valuation in terms of meeting Osimhen's release clause, because he's not on the best of terms there. So they would be willing to sell him at that price. To suggest that Liverpool are willing to spend 82 million and involve two players going that way, for me, it makes zero sense. So I don't believe there's any truth to this rumor. I think there could be a discussion between Osimhen and Nunes, as part of a deal. But I think it will, if that was the case, I think it would be done as two separate deals. It's very, uncommon to see swap deals in this day and age due to, PSR rules and all that sort of stuff. So if it happens, it would be a separate deal. Kind of like Quansah and Florian Wirtz, they've both, gone to the opposite clubs, but they have been earmarked as two separate deals. It could have easily been regarded as you know 70 million plus Quansa's fee and all that sort of stuff, but that's not the case. So for me, I think this news is complete BS. And I don't see there being any truth involving the two players plus 17 million top to get Osimhen. I think it's complete nonsense. Just got a comment here from Fozzie as well. It says, yes, bro, respect. Big up yourself, Fozzie. Thank you for your comment and thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your support there. Um, on to the next, not rumor, I'd suggest there's more news, and that is that Mamadashvili is on his way to officially join Liverpool Football Club. Of course, this deal was completed last summer. Of course, we sent the player out on loan to his previous club, which was Valencia, for another season, and now he'll be joining Liverpool officially in the next day or so. Probably even get an announcement for later on today. My sort of verdict on this move: am I excited about this player arriving to the club? I am. I think he's a fantastic shot stopper. Still question marks, I would say, in regards to his distribution, but that's something that can be ironed out with coaching and being alongside a master when it comes to Alison Becker. So for me, that's an area he can certainly improve. But in terms of natural ability of being a shot stopper, I think he's probably, one of the best in terms of his age group in Europe. So for me, it's a fantastic signing. Exciting to see, how he does in a Liverpool shirt, and he will definitely be, challenging Allison for that number one jersey. So for me, a good signing, and hopefully we'll get um, some sort of official presentation with him holding a Liverpool shirt in due course. So yeah, it'll be good to see, Mamadashvili officially being unveiled as a Liverpool player. Fozzie is saying me too, so he agrees with that sentiment there. But unfortunately, we got some sad news, I guess, today, and that is the departure of Taffarel and Fabian Ott. Um, both coaches have decided to leave the club. In regards to Taffarel, it was his decision. It was nothing that was, presented by the club for him to leave or anything to that nature. Um, I think the sort of big news around this departure is what happens with Allison, because Allison was very instrumental in bringing Taffarel to the club. That was the coach he wanted at Liverpool. Of course, they've worked previously in Brazil, so he wanted, the Brazilian legend to come to Liverpool and help aid his development, and get him into the best shape that he has done in the last few years. Honestly, guys, I have a feeling that this will be Alisson's last season at the club. Um, there's been a sort of video series. I haven't watched it yet, but there's a video series on the Liverpool YouTube channel surrounding Alisson in terms of his time at the club, and you getting behind the scenes with his family and all that sort of stuff. So for me, those are signs that this could be his farewell season, which is, yeah, a very sad thought, because he's definitely been by far one of the best Liverpool goalkeepers that I've watched in my lifetime. The player that probably came close is Pepe Reina, but I think Alisson surpasses him. So he'll be a huge loss. I know we've got Mamadashvili coming in now, but he's not quite at the level of Alisson. So if that happens, we'll talk about it, whenever we cross that road. But I do believe that, yeah, it would be a sad day to see Alisson leave, and I think that's probably partly the reason why Taffarel's left as well. But maybe he got an indication from Alisson and he thought maybe it's best for him to leave now, where he can focus on the Brazil national team. He's still part of that setup. He'll be joining Ancelotti very, very soon. So, yeah, sad to see Taffarel leave. Footballing legend, of course, but even his time at the club. Whenever you watch the behind the scenes or footage, he seems like a really nice guy. Gets along with everyone so well. So yeah, he'll definitely be a loss, I think, in that locker room, as well as Fabian Ott. So wish them both the best. But yeah, definitely came as a surprise that both of these coaches have left Liverpool. But that also led to further announcements, and that is that Liverpool have appointed Van Bronckhorst and also Javi Valero to the coaching staff. Just got a couple of comments here. So Fozzie's asked thoughts on Giovanni Van Bronckhorst joining. So for me, I think it's a very good signing, or very good appointment, I should say, for Liverpool. You've got a coach here who has managed at a very good level. The common thing between Van Bronckhorst and Arne Slot is that these are two coaches that have won the Eredivisie with Feyenoord, so they've got that Feyenoord connection there already. Of course, the Dutch connection continues as well with Van Bronckhorst joining the coaching staff, but he's had two good spells in his managerial career. One at Feyenoord, did a great job at Rangers as well, where he replaced Steven Gerrard. So I feel like he's got the right experience and the right qualities to be a number two. Of course, being a former player as well, I feel like that bodes very well when it comes to liaising with players and managing them the right way. So I think he will add a good balance to that coaching staff where in training sessions, he can speak from a player's point of view, but also communicate what the coach wants as well. So I think it's a very, very smart signing from Liverpool. In regards to Xavi Valero, so he's actually rejoining the club. He was previously here under Rafa Benitez. He has a huge reputation as one of the best goalkeeping coaches in the world. He's recently uh, we've basically appointed him from West Ham. He's been there for a large part of the last few years there. For me, it's a smart signing again, as he's a coach that knows the club very well. He knows the city very well, and I feel like he'll come in and it'll be a very smooth transition. He'll have Allison and Mamadashvili, in his sort of realms to coach them the right way. So for me, I think it's two smart signings. There's two smart appointments from the club. We've gone for experience. We've gone for two different coaches that probably at their different stages. Where Valero's very highly experienced. So you know him coaching Alisson will be a joy for him, but also someone like Mamadashvili, who's the next one in terms of um, being a top goalkeeper in world football. So that would be, an exciting prospect for the coach. But in terms of Van Bronckhorst, managing or being part of, joining a big club, and even if you're managing as a number two, you're very heavily involved in the setup. You're very much hands-on. So I think he'll enjoy that sort of day-to-day activities at the club and alongside Arne Slot, I think they could form a good partnership. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But I think it's very, very positive appointments from Liverpool. Couple comments here from Fozzie says, "We move, bro. You don't stand still." Totally agree with that. It's good to have different ideas, bro. I agree. So with these sort of different coaches that have been appointed, it's not like for like replacements. It's someone that's with different experience, different backgrounds. So for me, it bodes well. So I do feel like the profiles that we've assessed and we've brought into the club, I think they fit the mold, and hopefully, they form a good dynamic as a collective in terms of the coaching staff. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how these guys, help the likes of Allison, Mamadashvili, and Van Bronckhorst. Hopefully, he can help out in terms of the fullbacks because, of course, that was his position as well. So maybe he can help you know, Bradley, Frimpong, Kirkes really live up to their potential as well. So it'll be a very exciting appointment for us going forward. The final room of the show is Ibu Kanate. Now, I don't know if there's any truth to this because you always have to take these rumors online with a pinch of salt. But apparently, the rumor currently is that Kanate has rejected a contract from Liverpool, and there is interest from clubs like PSG, Real Madrid, and Al Hilal. And due to that so-called rejection, Liverpool may be willing to accept offers in the region of £40 million. Now, in terms of the rumor, I don't know if there's any truth to it. It seems a bit lazy from the journalists because we've heard this a week ago, but we were then told by Konate himself that it's fake news. So I think they just added a bit more context by mentioning clubs like PSG, Real Madrid, and Al Hilal to the rumor, but it doesn't really change the narrative there. So I don't think there's any truth to the rumor that he has rejected it. Um, but let's just paint the picture here. What should Liverpool do in this situation? Because if the player isn't showing any indication that he wants to stay or sign a new contract, Do Liverpool stick with him for another year and let him leave on a free, like we did with Trent? Or do we try and find suitors now and sell him for around that 40 million range and reinvest into the squad? I'm a little bit torn, and I don't want it to sound like I'm on the fence here. And the reason I'm torn is because my sort of impulse reaction would be selling. Because if you're not, you know, willing to commit to the cause and you're not showing any sort of inkling that you are going to sign a new contract, then there's no point in you being here. But because we had such a great season last year, I think if we were to sell Konate for 40 million, we're not going to sign a adequate replacement with that kind of money. We'll have to definitely, you know, ask John Henry to give us his cards again, and we got to dig deep and get the funds out for us to sign a top quality centre. Because I'll be honest with you, there aren't many out there that for me rival Konate in terms of like for like into the in ability wise. So it's one that I feel like the club have to be very, very smart and very, very measured in their approach. If we sign Guehi, then I feel like I would be a bit more content to let Konate stay for the final year. And if he decides to move on to Real Madrid, so be it. As long as we're able to, challenge for honours and win more than one trophy next season. And with Guehi on board as well, if Konate for some reason shows that, he's not fully focused or he's showing lapse in his game, then we've got an adequate replacement to come in to replace him in the team in Gay. So that's why I would feel a bit more confident knowing that if Kanate isn't living up to his sort of capability, then Gay is a pretty much a light for light replacement and can come in to the team very, very quickly. But having said that, I'm not saying Gay should be regarded as his long term success or anything to that nature. I still feel like if Kante does leave, we have to sign a real top quality centre back. Feel free to drop names in the chat if you know or if you have anyone in mind. The dream sign for me would be Bastoni, but I don't think that's a realistic target. Elsewhere, I can't think of anyone that really, you know, is the needle mover in terms of a centre back signing that will come in and, give oppositions or rival fans that fear factor, like we did when we signed for Investor. I don't think we have that sort of defender around in Europe, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, it's a tricky one because we know what the outcome would be if Konate plays for another season and doesn't sign a new contract. He'll end up at Real Madrid alongside Trent. That's not something we want to envision, but it's a possibility. But we might have to think a bit more strategically where, if we keep him on board, we're able to challenge for all honors. And if he wants to leave, he can leave. If he's not swayed by winning trophies, then, so be it. But if we sell him, I don't want us to start the season with, less quality in our squad. Even if Gay signs for us, we've got Joe Gomez, who, as much as I rate, we can't really rely on him in terms of playing consecutive games during the season. And if, Konate was to be sold, the club would go for possibly a young profile like a Hato or that type of player. And I don't know if that's the right type of signing to make. But, we'll cross that bridge, I guess, once we get some clarification in regards to Konate's deal. If he is signing a contract, I hope it happens before the end of the window. If he doesn't sign, then we're gonna have that whole, is he staying, is he not staying scenario throughout the whole season like we did last year with Trent. And, as a content creator, it got a bit boring talking about that all the time. So hopefully we get some clarification. If he wants to leave, then, so be it. But don't string us along like Trent did with us last year. So yeah, we'll see what happens in regards to Mate. if I was to make a prediction, I have a feeling he could sign a new contract, but it won't happen as soon as the end of this window. I think it will happen maybe during the season, which is not ideal, but that would just be my prediction there. So let's see. Let's see how it goes. I've just got a few comments here before we close the show. Kieran, big up Kieran says, hopefully Mamadashvili can learn from Allison this season and then be a great starter next year if Allison leaves. I've heard that he has been one of the best goalkeepers in La Liga, future proofing. That's exactly it. That's exactly the reason why we signed him last summer, where he just came off a fantastic tournament in the Euros for Georgia, and because of that, Liverpool wasted no time. Signed him for about 25 million, which is peanuts in this day and age. And he does have the potential to be one of the best goalkeepers in years to come. So we are definitely future proofing that goalkeeping department. It would be such a shame to see Alisson leave. I don't even want to think about that right now because it's not official news. It's just what we're envisioning for the future. But at least from Mamadashvili's point of view, he gets to train with one of the best goalkeepers ever, in my opinion, and he can, learn the trick of the trade and hopefully embed that in his game going forward. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But we've got two solid goalkeepers in this coming season, so it's going to be very good for Arne Slot to play goalkeepers and rotate them when required. Plenty of strength and depth in that area, so it's a positive sign for Liverpool going forward. Uh, Fozzie as well says fullback and midfield, bro. Gio was, yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. He will help in terms of the fullbacks. He'll help the midfielders as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I remember him being a very technical player, very good on the ball, and great crosser from the flank when he was more of a young fullback in his younger days. So for me, I think he definitely brings that expertise in certain areas of the pitch, which I'm sure he will, you know, present to the players and mentor them as well to some extent. So I think it's a good appointment. I really do. Uh, Kieran says, I would be gutted to see Kanate leave. I still think he's underrated amongst opposing fans. I do as well. I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves, to be fair. People always hail Saliba above him. I don't agree with that. I'm not just saying because I'm a Liverpool fan. I think Kanate is such a dominant centre back that there's not many defenders like him, in my opinion. In terms of a defender attacking the channels or in one-on-one duels on the flanks, Konate is one of the best. That's why, Trent was very fortunate to have someone like Konate who covered him whenever called upon. And that's probably why he's gonna fill Konate's absence when he's at Real Madrid because he's not going to have a defender like Konate in that Real Madrid squad. So that's his problem, not nothing to do with us now. But I think that yeah, I would love to see Konate leave, stay. Sorry, I don't think he'll leave, but you just never know with these situations. So we'll just have to stay patient on this one. Hopefully, we'll get some further news. Ideally, I'd love it for it to be announced before the end of the window, just to give us a bit of peace of mind going to next season that Konate is committed to the club. But I think it'll just depend on what FSG present to him in terms of the new contract because he's shown his love for the club. He's always speaking very highly of Liverpool and the people and the city and all that comes with it. So it's just down to his worth. If FSG don't match his ambition or match his requirements from a financial point of view, then he does have a right to move elsewhere. But hopefully they can come to common grounds and agree a deal, and that will, of course, solidify our position, I guess. And you mentioned the word future proofing. It future proofs our defense going forward as well, because I think he could be a prominent figure in our defense. He might not be a leader like Van Dijk, but he can definitely be a very dominant player in our defense and help players around him as well. So for me, if you can make that happen, I think it helps his career as well as Liverpool as well as a club. So hopefully we'll get some news in due course. Buffalo, Soldier Big so he said this guy is a beast defender. if that's in reference to Konate, yeah, he certainly is. Um, Boy says I would let him go to get money in if he doesn't sign, bro. Think about it this way: players run down the contract will be a common thing at Liverpool if we let this one happen again. Yeah, it's definitely one to think about. But I'm just thinking from a footballing point of view in terms of us, losing Konate. I think it would be a huge void to fill if they can get a like for like replacement, which I don't think there's many options out there. Then it could be into consideration. I think whatever the club decide to do, I'm not going to say I'm going to agree with it, but I can understand it because I can understand both sides of the argument. Originally, I had the impulsive reaction was like, oh, sell him, use that money to sign another defender. But after some thought and some measured sort of calculations in terms of, if we get 40 million for him, now how much can we spend on signing a adequate replacement? There aren't many defenders out there. One of the defenders I wanted was ironically Diomande. That's on the verge of signing for Crystal Palace right now. He's worth, I think, around 40, 45 million. So that would have been a great signing. Now, if we had gotten Gay and Diomande, then that would have been smart from Liverpool. But I don't know if that's a possibility. But we'll see. Um, I really hope he signs. I really rate Konate as a defender. I like him as a person. He seems like a very nice guy. Um, has always shown his passion and his love for the club and for the people of Liverpool. So, you know, hopefully, we can come to an agreement with the player and his agents, and hopefully a new contract can be signed before the window closes. That would be the best scenario in the end. But let's see what happens with Konate. For this world says Ali ain't going nowhere. Let's end it there. I hope not. I really hope this is not the case. But due to the Taffarel news today, a lot of fans are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, thinking he could leave. So I hope that is not the case. That's not the energy I want to try and put out there. But we have to have these difficult discussions, unfortunately, sometimes. Chris says, "Am I ungrateful to say I think we need to bring in two centre backs in this window?" I don't think you are. I don't think you're being selfish or anything to that nature. In an ideal world, it would make sense to have two centre backs only because of Joe Gomez's injury record. He's a player that unfortunately we can't rely upon as a fourth choice even. Last year, he was fourth choice, and to be fair, he was third choice, and then picked up an injury, and then Quansah ended up, taking his place as third choice, and then he ended up being more of a bit part player, playing at fullbacks at time, in terms of on the left or the right hand side. So it would make sense for us to sign two centre backs. I just don't think it will happen in this window. I'll be very surprised if that does happen, but you never know. Liverpool have surprised us this window with big signings, so you can never second guess them at this stage. I would say, but I don't think it's too much to say two defenders. I don't think it's crazy. It makes perfect sense where you have two defenders that come into a squad behind Van Dijk and Konate. Joe Gomez ends up being a fifth choice centre back, but he will be the defender that covers all of the positions on the back line. So it makes the perfect sense to have a player of his quality and experience in that kind of magnitude, I guess. So for me, it makes sense to get two centre backs. I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. Fozzie says Guehi and Hato. That would be a great scenario. Because you have one experienced defender in Gay, and then you have another player who's young and up and coming, but is a hybrid player. He can play at left back and centre back. So that would be a smart signing. And then you have Joe Gomez at fifth choice. Um, Whether Hato leaves, I don't think he'll end up leaving. If I'm being honest, I think he'll stay at Ajax for one more season, and then next summer will be the time where he departs. So that's just a prediction I have for Hato. Uh, Buffalo Soldier says, "I hope he does stay one of the best in the Prem." If that's in regards to Konate, I totally agree. I think he is as well. Um, I just have a feeling he will sign a new contract, but you just yeah, you just never know, isn't it? So we'll just have to wait and see, unfortunately. For this, I hope Konate signs as well. Yeah, I think a lot of us fans will go well with that sentiment there. Chris says that would be ideal, Fozzie. Yeah. Fozzie said we still didn't replace Matip and now Quansah. Yeah, on paper, I guess that's not how it panned out. I think Quansah ended up being Matip's replacement, even though that wasn't the plan. And that was only because Matip suffered that ACL injury. Quansah was in the squad and performed at a very good level. And so, therefore, the next season, he was regarded as his replacement, right? But yeah, I get your point. But whether we do or not, it remains to be seen. I think Guehi will come in to replace Quansah in terms of the current void that's left in our centre back position right now. But he could also be earmarked as Konate's replacement if he doesn't sign a new contract. So we're in a circle here. We don't seem to replace the player that leaves, but suppose we end up replacing someone else in the squad, and it just feels like that we haven't got the full sort of complete um, set of defenders there. I think if we were to sign Gay and Hato in terms of your scenario there, then that would be the perfect situation there. I don't see us signing both, unfortunately, but we'll see what happens. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Fozzie's World. Thank you to Kieran. And thank you to Buffalo Soldier for your comments. Appreciate your engagement. As always, guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, I will be doing a show tomorrow where the topic is mainly surrounding Harvey Elliott, and we'll be analyzing his current situation. And the question is, should we keep him or should we sell him due to the fantastic years he's had? Maybe Arne Slot could be swayed to keep him on board for another season. That's a discussion that we can have tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll be doing our weekly transfer talk show where I'll round up all the latest rumors from this week and then give you my thoughts. And of course, feel free to get involved in the live chat as well. Just got a couple of comments here before we close. Fozzie says Gomez will never be considered bro due to injuries. Yeah, I agree. That's why in my head, if I'm writing all the players down on paper, I wouldn't want him to be fourth choice. For me, it makes more sense for him to be fifth choice, where he's the extra defender in our squad that can cover the back line but doesn't really have a direct position, if that makes sense. So that would make the perfect sort of scenario for us as a squad. And of course, he would help us with the homegrown quota and all that sort of stuff. So he'll still be a valid option, if you know certain players aren't fit. We've had Bradley that's picked up injuries last season. Konate's had his fair share of injuries. So, these players, they're not always fully fit. And with us playing so many games throughout the whole season, every player will, take part at some point. So having Joe Gomez as a fifth choice or as your extra defender in the squad, it doesn't put too much pressure on him and he'll be ready whenever called upon. So I think that would be the smart decision for Joe Gomez. But yeah, let's see what happens going forward. Kieran says, thanks for the stream. See you guys soon. Big up, Kieran. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate you joining in. Fozzie saying, great streamer. Big up yourself. Fozzie and then Van Dijk getting older. Yep. I said this when we signed or when we gave Van Dijk the new contract that we should find his successor this summer. I think that makes the most perfect sense. And I also feel like we should have got Mohamed Salah's successor this summer as well. But maybe because we're doing too much um, in terms of adding new players to the squad, maybe it would have been crazy to do all of that all at once as well. So maybe those two profiles in terms of Van Dijk and Salah's successors are earmarked as targets for next summer. So when they come into a squad, they've got 1 year to play alongside Salah and Van Dijk and learn from them. Be a sponge and take all the sort of information that they can from these legends. And then once, if Salah and Van Dijk decide to leave, at the end of their contracts, then we've got ready-made replacements within the squad rather than us trying to sign someone because clubs will take the mick and try and add a few more millions to the price uh, which naturally happens. So hopefully, Liverpool play it smart and try and find the successes before that day comes when Van Dijk and Salah leaves. Um, but yeah, we'll see when that day happens. But yeah, I think there are a few players out there that could be regarded as Salah's replacement. You've actually just mentioned one of the names. Would you take Kudus as his replacement? I would. Um, I wouldn't say they're like for like, but Kudus does bring something different from that right hand side where he's direct, he's electric on the ball, but he's a goal scorer as well. And you get a lot of wingers nowadays that aren't consistent with their goal scoring. I think Kudus is if he's played in his position and he's given that sort of confidence to be the main man or to have the freedom to express himself and you know roam around and try and get into goal scoring opportunities, I think Kudus would be fantastic in our squad. So for me, he has to play right wing. I was quite disappointed last season that he was played on the left hand side. I know he's left footed, but that's not really his game. He's not that out and out winger that likes to whip in crosses with his left foot. He's the type of winger that likes to cut inside and cause havoc and try and score from long range or try and find himself towards that near post. He's that type of player. And of course, Kudus brings you versatility where he can play as a striker. I remember watching him playing up top for Ajax. I think, in fact, when we played Ajax a few years ago, and he was the player that scored against us that day as well. So he's a player that can play in different positions and I feel like he would be a great signing. The only stumbling block would be the fee. How much West Ham would demand from Liverpool to sign him. If it's like 80, 90 million, then I think that's crazy amount of money there. And of course, I think Kudus, if he does stay at West Ham, he needs to show a better account of himself this year. If he has a mediocre season like he did last year, then his stock will reduce and might help into the signing him if his transfer fee is a bit lower, but you question his credibility or you know is he the player that we think he is? It might you know devalue his stock a little bit. So for me, it's a big season for Kudus, and not just from a Liverpool point of view. If he wants that big move after next season, then he needs to perform. So for me, he could be listed as one of Salah's future replacements. There's one player I really like. I don't think he'll stay at his current club. Is Luce. So he's a young French winger, slash number 10. Very, very silky on the ball. I think he's been linked with PSG. So they seem to be signing all of the best young talent there, and yeah, it makes perfect sense for that to happen. But if you're not familiar with him, check him out in terms of compilations. And if you get an opportunity to watch him in a live game, I think he's very, very talented. He looks like he's a very special talent. That would be the young profile that I'd go for. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens in regards to that. 46 don't think he's worth 80 now. No, I don't think he's 50. Yeah, I'd be happy 50. I'd settle for that kind of price. Anything above 50, I think is too much. So there has been some rumors to suggest that um, Liverpool could try to sign Kudus this window. I'd be very surprised if that happens, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think right wing is a priority position for us to address this summer. I see it being more of a position we look into next summer, if I'm being honest. But we'll see. We have been surprised with the sign of foreign vets. A lot of us probably wouldn't even regard it as, a number 10 to be the number one position that we, address in the squad. But he's coming. Frimpong was always going to come in to replace Trent. Turkez, of course, a player that we thought, should come in to replace Andrew Robertson. So yeah, Liverpool making the right moves right now, which is very positive to see. Hopefully, we can add Guehi, and the dream signing for me would be Isak. I know your dream signing would be Alvarez. I just don't know if that's realistic. They don't seem to want to part ways with the player. So for me, Isak would be the guy that I would love for us to sign. I have an inkling, maybe call me deluded, but I feel like we might end up signing Isak. I don't know where it is, but I'm just getting some sort of vibes that it could happen. So only time will tell. But if that wasn't able to be a reality, I can see the club targeting someone like Ekitike. I'll probably go for Osimhen, who's a bit more of an established striker, but I see him moving on to sort of the next big thing in terms of being a player with huge potential, but just one level away from being top class. So um, we'll see. I think with regards to Ekitike, I do like him. Still have slight reservations in terms of his clinical finishing, but if you're playing in a team where you've got Verts, Salah, Gakpo, Diaz, behind you, then you should be good enough to bang in the goal. So let's see what the future holds in terms of our strike force there. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.